Pikes Peak is possibly one of the most difficult races on the racing calendar. Nothing really compares to the extreme conditions that you see at Pikes Peak, both in terms of weather and in terms of altitude. Just the change in altitude from where you start to where you are at the peak at 4,300 meters, it really is a challenge for the engine.
The beauty of racing at Pikes Peak is that you're taking part in one of the most historic motorsport events that there is. I think the thing with Pikes Peak is also that it all boils down to your one try. A lot of motorsport is a series, it's a season, it's 10 races, 12 races, 20 races. This is one race once a year and you have one shot.
You also have this mountain that you have to conquer. You have 156 turns throughout the whole race. Your car is losing its capabilities because of the altitude. You're losing your capabilities because of the altitude as a driver. So really it is one of the most challenging motorsports events that both the driver and the engine and the vehicle can compete in.
I'm a car guy through and through. I would call it almost an affliction. Can't stop buying cars. I have a bigger problem with selling them. Ever since I've been a kid, playing with Matchbox and Hot Wheels cars, to now being a grown-up and kind of doing the same thing. I just love cars. The main thing for me about motorsport is sort of the way it drives technology forward, the way it's impacted the cars that you drive on the road 20 years further along, and you can really see that. I mean, there's obviously big things that you can see straight away, but there's also smaller details that sort of leak through, and that bleeding process is a fantastic thing to sort of look at as a sort of a car enthusiast, both from historical and a modern perspective.
There's definitely a lot of passion when it comes to racing, to be honest. With my background from the fast jet side, speed has always been a thing for me. So obviously with racing, it's the fastest you can go on land. It's thrilling, it's exciting, and for me the most important part is the noise. The noise you get from an engine is something that you can't compare with.
I remember talking with Elizabeth about this for the first time, and she sort of pitched the idea at me, and at first I thought, this is never going to work out, this is crazy.
You're like, what can we do with our engine? It's a good engine. We have good technology. We've been using it in passenger cars. We have this passion for racing. Maybe there's something we could do to prove that our technology and our people can take a normal production engine and make it work in the racing scene. So I found myself standing in front of our EMT and pitching the idea of Pikes Peak directly to our CEO and directly to the rest of the board. And although very nerve-wracking, the response was really, really positive.
When I was a child, I was always excited about racing. I was watching a lot of race activities on television. And as an engineer, I'm fascinated about racing because it's about time, quality, and engineering solutions. And that's where we are good at Aurobay.
The engines we make at Aurobay are designed to say the highest standards on an OEM market. We have extremely durable engines that are developed to last the very stringent testing regimes. The quality of our hardware is very, very high, and it's the perfect baseline to go from there to try and achieve higher performance outputs. Obviously we're reducing the effective lifespan of the product, but the base design of the product is so good that it's a great opportunity to build on that. There's so many details in our engines which are unique but also extremely well engineered and allow it to be stronger, stiffer, and tolerate higher pressure, higher temperatures. It's a fantastic starting point.
Racing with combustion engines is very important because with combustion engines you get the emotions into racing. We have seen all battery cars in races. They are fantastic to drive and they are good in races, but you are missing the emotion of a combustion engine. That's why we believe we should race in Pikes Peak with a combustion engine.
After we decided to go racing at Pikes Peak, we started looking at options for a car, and obviously also looking at options for getting expertise in sort of running a race car and setting a race car up, and also with sort of setting up the powertrain in the race car. And very quickly we realized that Wolf can do it all. They have their own car, which is extremely competitive, and they have a very competent engineering team, and they have an extremely competent team building these amazing cars down in Italy. So it was the perfect partner for us to go up Pikes Peak.
La storia del marchio Wolf nasce nel 76, nello stesso anno in cui anche mio padre fonda la nostra azienda, e quindi è stata una storia parallela con nel 77 il debutto in Formula 1 di Wolf Racing Car con la vittoria al Gran Premio d'Argentina del 1977, e una storia che ha visto in quell'anno Jody Scheckter combattere con Niki Lauda e la Ferrari per vincere il primo campionato del mondo. Oggi Wolf Racing è rappresentata appunto dall'azienda della mia famiglia. Noi seguiamo molto la filosofia, quella degli anni 70, cioè artigianalità, inventiva, fantasia e passione. Sono quello che ci ha permesso di diventare sicuramente il costruttore di vetture light più importante in Europa e sicuramente quello che produce le vetture con le performance migliori. Questo è un dato oggettivo e vivendo della nostra passione ne sono molto orgoglioso. La macchina che useremo a Pikes Peak è una Wolf GB8 Extreme, quindi una monoscocca in fibra di carbonio monoposto che ha superato i crash test della FIA e quindi è conforme alla normativa FIA Formula 1 2005, quindi una macchina prima di tutto sicura, una macchina anche leggera perché il punto forte della nostra operazione, visto che utilizzeremo un motore di serie o derivato strettamente dalla serie, è essere leggeri, quindi la macchina pesa 540 kg senza pilota ma con i liquidi.
Once the decision was taken to go racing at Pikes Peak, we quickly put together a core team of dedicated individuals who are experts in their field to sort of put together the package that we need to make our powertrain competitive in the Wolf vehicle. Together with this team, we have been testing in 3 different kinds of test cells that we have in Torslanda here in Gothenburg. First, we started off with testing in a so-called start rig, where we could start checking all the wiring connectors and actuators and calibrating sort of the base software of our control unit, which is a motorsport control unit, so it's new for us. Then we moved to our, let's say, performance dyno, where we can run the engine through its complete operating range and optimize the behavior of all the different controllers and obviously the combustion calibration. And finally, we moved from that dyno to our high altitude dyno, where we can simulate basically altitudes up to 4,000 meters. And they've done fine tuning to make sure that we're prepared for what's happening when we get to the mountain. This testing phase, I'm not gonna lie, has been really, really difficult. So it has been a challenge to get everything done within the time frame that we've had. A lot of uncertain moments where we've really had to sort of sit down, reset, and think of how we're going to solve a problem and then figure out the best way forward. Once we got to Italy for the first shakedown, we were all nervous for how it was going to go. Once the car went out for its first few laps, we instantly had some issues. We had an issue with the wiring loom. Then once we fixed that problem, we had a couple more little teething issues with some sensors. And one more thing, the oil pressure is really high.
High, we go down?
Once we had that ironed out, then everything started to look up. Does it sound like a TCR for you?
No, absolutely. You can believe that it is here, no?
It was really a great moment when Christian came back from his first problem-free stint. The car was performing the way it's supposed to be and he was all smiles.
Mi sono trovato subito a mio agio, anche se le condizioni meteo purtroppo non erano le migliori perché la mattina pioveva, però nel pomeriggio siamo riusciti a fare qualche run sull'asciutto e mi è sembrato subito una buona macchina, un buon motore, anche se in quel giorno ancora non avevo tutta la potenza perché si stava andando un po' step to step, però mi ha dato subito una buona impressione.
Il primo test in pista è stato a Varano dei Melegari ed è stato molto interessante perché il test è andato anche troppo bene per essere il primo shakedown di una macchina, ma quello che è stato importante è l'analisi dei dati che è stata fatta dopo. Quindi i ragazzi di Aurobay hanno potuto verificare che anche in una situazione dove non c'erano problemi particolari c'erano delle aree dove si poteva migliorare molto e quindi sia dal punto di vista del raffreddamento dell'aria in aspirazione al motore, che soprattutto in altura diventerà qualcosa di importante, e anche della quantità di aria aspirata. Quindi sono due aspetti che hanno permesso ai tecnici di Aurobay di lavorare per poterci dare dei vantaggi importanti alla prima gara.
We're of course going to have to do some fine tuning, but it did what it was supposed to do, and we ticked all the boxes that we wanted to tick. So yeah, we were set, and not long after that, the car was in a container on its way to the US.
Il pilota che ci accompagnerà alla Pikes Peak è Christian Merli, italiano, 5 volte campione europeo. L'abbiamo scelto perché ha manifestato l'entusiasmo di accettare questa sfida. Lui è un rookie, quindi è una situazione per lui nuova, ma aveva un bisogno di entusiasmo perché è un lavoro difficile, perché è una preparazione importante, bisogna avere le motivazioni e noi siamo convinti che le motivazioni facciano la differenza.
Per me era un sogno, ma non era nei miei programmi perché appunto è un investimento notevole e anche comunque proprio una preparazione apposita, quindi quando c'è stata la richiesta da parte di Wolf e di Aurobay di partecipare non ho esitato un momento a dire di sì, e sono 30 anni ormai che mi sono specializzato nelle corse in salita e poter la velocità in montagna ha degli aspetti che appunto ti permette di utilizzare dei prototipi su strade quotidianamente si usano con le macchine normali, penso sia una cosa unica.
The Pikes Peak International Hill Climb takes place on a public road. It's a toll road that goes through a national forest and ends up at the top of this mountain. So it's a road with road markings. It's got, the imperfections that a road can have.
You have variations in temperature, you have variations in the oxygen content in the air that's feeding your engine. You also have obviously the altitude difference from the start of the races to the finish of the races. And so the calibration for the engines has to be complete and has to be able to perform at varying different conditions from the starts of the races to the end of the race.
You still have sort of the scars of the previous winter. Some years you turn up and there's a giant hole in the road that goes right across the road, or sort of like a ridge. And all this kind of stuff doesn't happen on a normal racetrack. These are unique conditions, so it's one of the exciting aspects of the race. It all becomes a extremely challenging place to go and try and drive as fast as possible.
Pikes Peak is the second oldest motorsport event in America. It was founded in 1916 by Spence Penrose, where they were driving totally different vehicles. If you look at what we have going up the mountain today compared to what you had back then it was open tops, very flimsy, cardboardy kind of sides with massive engines. You were racing on dirt tracks. You didn't have any safety barriers. And the speed that you were going, although wasn't the same as the vehicles today, was relatively fast considering what safety precautions you had in your car.
One of the things that we were working on now was optimizing the cooling and making the cooling good enough because of the extremely difficult conditions we have with the low density, at the high altitude. You have a lot of full load with going up a mountain, and those cars were doing the same thing 100 years ago. And you know, the technology wasn't where we are today, but they were still making do with what they had, and they were still pushing the boundaries, and that is what makes this race so special.
The testing that you get to do when you get to Pikes Peak is divided into 3 parts. They split the full run into 3 sections. So you don't ever get to do the full run until the end of, until the actual race day. So for our first one, we were assigned to the top section of the track. We arrived there very, very early, very, very cold. We had to set up and then we had to wait for the sun to rise so we could start our testing.
We went in there feeling well prepared. Obviously early start, as every day is at Pikes Peak. You get up to be ready to run as soon as it is basically a bit of daylight.
Le prove si fanno la mattina all'alba. Sono partito molto cauto perché l'asfalto era a 2 gradi e non sapevo cosa aspettarmi dai pneumatici con quella temperatura, invece il grip era buono, quindi il secondo giro ho avuto un po' più confidenza.
We're getting ready to sort of stage up and go faster, but the day didn't go as we expected. So as soon as he pulls away, we think something's not right. Obviously the car it didn't take off the way it was supposed to. And you start getting worried, and then obviously you see him pull over, which I still didn't really expect him to do. So then at that point you're like, well, oh, did we blow something up? Has something gone wrong? At the end of the day, you know, the car comes back on a flatbed, and up to the point where it comes back on a flatbed, and you really get sort of to talk with Christian and say, hey, what happened? Clutch. You're quite stressed.
I was just filled with complete and utter dread. We'd worked so hard, we'd got there, we were into testing, and all of a sudden the car wasn't working, and we weren't sure why. The guys did the initial checks and they were like, oh yes, the engine's fine.
We spent a lot of time afterwards checking the logs, checking all of our data, and making sure that we could see when sort of the clutch was starting to go, if there was any events that led to it, and then sort of optimizing the start procedure and the way we had the calibration set up to make sure that we were a bit easier on the clutch going forward from there on, to avoid having this happen again.
At Pikes Peak, the qualification is done on the first section of the race. So for us, this was day 2. So we'd done the mad panic, we'd got the clutch changed, and we were there for the start of the qualifying.
Our qualifying day had pretty bad conditions. It started off in the morning with sort of a really sticky, wet road. It hadn't rained as such, but it was extremely sort of just slippery. The sun never came out, so it never really dried up. And the weather just sort of got more and more overcast. And we ended up with, obviously, it being rained out at the end. Our qualifying run was a little bit slower than we were hoping it to be, but it was explained by the conditions more than anything else. In the end, we qualified second fastest overall and obviously fastest ICE engine. We felt like we might be able to be a striking distance of going fastest overall, so it was awesome. Not much more we could have hoped for. It's raining.
Oh, it's raining. Oh. Just in time.
Before the race and the waiting to start after getting up so early in the morning was torture, and the time just seemed to be ticking slowly. It's like tick, tick, tick. And at the same time, we had the guys doing the last alterations to the car. We had everyone preparing mentally for what we had to do and for finding out where we were going to start in the lineup. Was it a good position for us? What was the temperatures going to be like? Was it the optimum conditions for us to get up the mountain?
The nerves started to build as we got closer and closer to our turn, and it wasn't helped by the fact that there was sort of huge amount of issues on the mountain. These abandoned runs basically meant that we were right, let's go, let's go, let's go. And then, oh no, never mind, actually hang on, there's an issue, you can get out of the car again. So I think he got in and out of the car 3 or 4 times, and sort of one time we were basically ready to go and then we had to abandon again. And I can't imagine how stressful that is as a driver. Because I mean, your adrenaline must be pumping at that point when you think, okay, I'm up in a minute or two, I'm gonna do the drive of my life. And then it's like, nope, hang on.
Solitamente sono abbastanza tranquillo e cerco magari di distrarmi un po', pensare alla gara, ma cerco di distrarmi un po', non troppo, ma cercando di parlare con i meccanici, insomma, di non crearmi troppa pressione. Qui è un po' diverso perché comunque la pressione c'è, l'emozione c'è, perché insomma è una gara unica, è particolare, quindi cercherò di mettermi più tranquillo possibile, pensare bene a quello che devo fare senza crearmi troppo stress, questo è l'importante.
I'm quite an emotional person, and for me, this, I poured my heart and soul into the team and into this project. So for me, this was more than a year in making. It's one of those things where you put your neck out and say, we're gonna do this crazy thing. And people kind of believe you and say, okay, maybe we can do this crazy thing. And at that point, this crazy thing is literally happening. And I can't do anything more at all at that point. All I can do is look at it and wait for it to come to the conclusion that it comes to. It's also obviously a very emotional 15 minutes. You're nervous, you're happy, you're at the same time scared. You're just scared that, wow, what if it doesn't work? I mean, you're scared for the driver, you're scared because it's fundamentally a dangerous thing to do. It's just an intoxicating cocktail of all the different thoughts that are rushing through your head about as fast as the car was rushing up the mountain.
Then we got the final splits and we realized that we had won the unlimited class. And this was just absolutely amazing. All the hard work that we'd put in, all the long hours, finally getting to the top of the hill, and it was all finished. And we'd actually achieved what we wanted to achieve, and we'd won the unlimited class.
If somebody had ever told me that when I was a kid, that one day you're going to be in the team that wins the unlimited class at Pikes Peak, I would never have believed it. So it's an awesome achievement. We did this with a stock engine off the production line that we did not modify. It's an awesome thing as an engine manufacturer to say that we've done that, but it's also just an awesome thing to be able to say as a car fan. So yeah, really proud. I mean, the fact that we were the fastest combustion engine and you're put up against real, well-prepared racing engines that people have put a lot of hours into optimizing, and we were able to beat them. That's, yeah, I'm incredibly proud of that.
The first time I heard about Aurobay going to Pikes Peak was a little bit before the announcement of our new company, right on the heels of Aurobay becoming part of Horse Powertrain Limited, the new company that we formed. And hearing that my future company was going to be in the race was something super exciting. And when I saw that they actually won, it was extremely exciting. I mean, seeing all the effort that the team has put together, great car, incredible driving, and the fact that that car has a stock engine, an actual production engine, unlike many of the other competitors, I felt excited, but I also felt so proud of the team. So Horse Powertrain, in terms of the involvement in racing, I think it's a great match. If you look at the company mission, vision, and what we intend to do, we're here to continue to develop engines, ICE engines, hybrid engines, high efficient engines to support the transition to net zero. That's our goal, that's our mission. And the reality is racing has always been a key part in terms of development of future technology. So for a company like us that envisions to be the leader in this space and to continue to advance technologies in engines and transmissions, racing is the perfect space to be.